meeting.
Yeah, no, it helps make sure that people understand.
Yeah, I
that when we share it, people are not surprised that their conversations and things like that are not being.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Great. As people, we'll give it I'll give it another 2-3 minutes before we get started, and the session will be. I mean, you've got up to an hour in which to make your presentation, Alick, and following on from that, people will share their questions. In the chat box at the top, box, and at the end of your session, we will go through any questions that people have.
COVID-19. Oh yeah. But the fact that there's someone. Are you there? But can you get me? You will get me.
All right, so we'll be starting the next 1 minute. How's everybody doing? Feel free to comment in the chat there. It's okay if you don't respond to me with your mics, so that we don't have.
Yes, I can hear.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Simunza from BongoHive, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's regulatory session with the Zambia Information Communications and Technology Agency. As the Zambia Information and Communications Technology Agency is responsible for regulating the, as you can tell, the information communications and technology space in Zambia. And it's an honor to have them here, and we would like to have a conversation with them with regard to, in this case, FinTechs in particular. So these are technology companies that are addressing challenges or building solutions or providing solutions for the financial space. And yesterday's session, we had a great session with the Securities Exchange Commission. So today we'd like to hear from Alick Mponela, who is the legal officer, at the Zambia Information Communications and Technology Agency, or I'll start using ZICTA for short. And I'd like to welcome everybody. Alick, we have on the call, we have people that are participating in the FinTech4U program, which is a program that is run by UNCDF in partnership with BongoHive. to support startups that are building solutions in the financial technology, in the finance space. We would like to learn about the space in which ZICTA, the space that ZICTA applies this regulation to, not only to learn how we can build new solutions, but who we can have conversations with and what we can approach you as an agency for. So if you'd like, I'd like to hand over to you, and just like we did yesterday, any questions that the community will have will be, as you are having your presentation, as you're giving your presentation, will be shared within the chat, and we'll go to the questions after. We'll read the questions after. We'll read the questions after the chat so that we can share the questions with you. So handing over to you, Alick.
Hello.
Hi, Alick.
Thank you. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you so much, and it's really a pleasure to be part of this workshop and to just share information on the role of ZICTA in terms of regulating digital financial services. So I'm here, I'm seated in our little boardroom. We're trying to social distance or physical distance. So there's 3 of us in this room. I'm here with Bernard and Vanessa. So we're going to do this presentation collectively. So I will speak mostly, but if there are any questions that they can help with, they'll chip in and attend to your questions. So if everyone is good to go, then we can start with the presentation. So what I would do is I'll just share the screen so that you're able to see my presentation. Sure. Okay. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Thank you. Yes, we are.
Okay. Thank you. Right. So we're going to speak again. I'll state we're going to speak into the ZICTA'S regulatory mandate in terms of digital financial services. So it says on the screen that the presentation will be done by Mr. Thomas Malama, Director, Legal and Regulatory Affairs, ZICTA. I am not Mr. Malama. Mr. Malama is attending to another arrangement or meeting, and that's why he asked me to sit in and just speak into these issues. So my name is Alick Mponela, and I'm the legal officer at ZICTA. So the outline of our presentation today will be, as you can see from your screen. So we'll talk briefly about ZICTA, how ZICTA is established, and the mandate that ZICTA has been given under the law. Then we'll go straight into talking about regulatory framework governing digital financial platforms in Zambia. Then we'll discuss ZICTA'S role in the regulation of digital financial services, and we'll end with ZICTA'S support to FinTechs. So briefly about ZICTA. ZICTA is a statutory body. It's established under the ICT Act of 2009, and it is established as a sector-specific regulator for the ICT sector in Zambia. Okay, so apart from the ICT Act, ZICTA is mandated to administer 2 other acts, which are the ECT Act, the Electronic Communications Transactions Act, also of 2009, and the Postal Services Act of 2009. But for purposes of our discussion today, we will just focus on the ICT Act and the ECT Act. We won't discuss the Postal Services Act. Okay. So under the ICT Act, ZICTA, we're calling it the authority in this presentation, is mandated. ZICTA'S mandate is defined in Section 6 of the Act, which generally provides that the authority shall regulate the provision of electronic communications services and products, monitor the performance of the sector, including the level of investment and availability, quality, costs, and standards of electronic communication services. Okay. Briefly, under the ICT Act, the general mandate of ZICTA, you can see it from the preamble of the Act. Okay, and this includes to develop a safe and secure and effective environment for the consumer, business sector, and government to conduct and use electronic communications, promote legal certainty and confidence, to encourage investment and innovation in the electronic communications industry, and to facilitate the creation of secure communication systems and networks. If I'm too fast, please just comment in the comment section, and then I will slow down. Right, so in terms of the regulatory framework governing the digital payment platforms in Zambia, firstly, I want to state that it is not ZICTA'S mandate to regulate the financial sector. So the financial sector is broadly regulated by the Bank of Zambia, but ZICTA plays a role, which is why ZICTA and the Bank of Zambia have entered into an MOU where we collaborate on issues that are common in terms of our roles. So we work together with Bank of Zambia because we have recognized that Bank of Zambia and ZICTA both have a role to play in regulating digital financial services, regardless of the fact that Bank of Zambia is the main regulator of financial services in Zambia. So we're stating here that the Bank of Zambia, under the National Payment Systems Act, regulates the money or the mobile money or digital financial services platforms, which are sometimes subsidiaries of telecommunication companies, but operate independently from the they operate independent from the telecoms company themselves. So what I'm trying to say is, for example, you have Airtel Networks and Airtel Money. So Airtel Money is a subsidiary of Airtel Networks. So they operate independently, but they are related companies. Okay, so the Bank of Zambia oversees and regulates these units and all other digital financial systems, I should have said financial systems in Zambia. Now, the role of ZICTA is very brief. You would derive these roles from both the ECT Act and the ICT Act. So we've just summarized in this presentation a few important ones that we can share with you. And some of them are direct and some are remote, really. For example, if you look at the licensing role, which is the first point here, we're saying ZICTA licenses service providers such as Airtel, MTN, Zamtel, Liquid Telecom, etc., that provide platforms upon which digital financial services are provided to the public. Without the network service providers, there would be no platform for digital financial services. So our role really under the ICT Act is to give life to these companies that provide you with the internet or with the platform upon which you can provide your financial services. So that's role number one on the part of ZICTA. Role number two, ZICTA is mandated under the ICT Act to ensure that network service providers provide good quality service to the public. So it is our role to ensure that if Airtel is providing internet, or if Airtel is providing, if Zamtel is providing internet, it is our role to ensure that they provide quality service to the public. You can imagine a situation where you buy bundles and there's no connection and you have a mobile app for your product. It means your clients or the public will not be able to access those digital financial services because of the poor quality of our service. So what ZICTA does is we set certain parameters, or we set standards that the mobile network operators or the service providers are supposed to follow. And we do constantly monitor their networks just to ensure that they're providing good service. And if they don't provide good service, we penalize them in most cases. I'm sure you read in the media in the recent past where we've penalized them, we've asked them to pay money or something, you know, for providing poor quality of service. The other role that ZICTA plays is universal access. So the ICT Act creates the Universal Access and Service Fund, which is a fund that is used for financing universal access and services. So simply put, universal access means access by all citizens to ICT services. Okay, so ZICTA is running projects such as the installation of communication equipment, such as towers, in underserved and unserved areas to ensure that people in these areas have access to ICTs. By underserved and unserved areas, I'm talking about areas where, for example, the mobile network operators have not gone to because they won't make profits there. So ZICTA goes to those areas and installs communication towers just so that everyone in that area or in those areas is able to access these ICT platforms. Okay, so as a result of that, digital financial service providers are able to provide services to people in those underserved and unserved areas once the networks are established. Okay, so move on to the next one. The next one is data protection. As you may be aware, in terms of the ICT Act, personal information is private and should not be shared with any third parties without the consent of the data subject. The data subject is the person that is giving you the information, or a court order, or where the law specifically requires. You know, so personal information is defined in the ICT Act, and it includes your name, and this is information that you would collect from your clients as you go about your daily business. So it includes the name, the residential address, the ID of the person, and things like that. So this is very important for us. We have a mandate under the ICT Act to ensure that everybody complies with that. So we want to make sure that when you are providing or someone is subscribing to your services, you know, if you're going to share the information that you collect from them, you have to make sure that you get their written consent. So sometimes we just do a random visit on you just to see the forms that clients sign when they are subscribing to your services. And if you're sharing that information, we want to see in black and white the aspect of consent, the part where the client is giving consent for you to share that information. If you don't get the consent of the client, then you're in breach of the ICT Act. Okay, so these are crucial elements in the provision of digital financial services, especially in attempts to avoid financial scams and fraud. The next role that I'll talk about is network security. So according to the 2018 National ICT Survey on household and individual respondents, it revealed that they felt insecure to use the different digital financial services on the market due to the increase in cybercrime and other related fraud. Like I stated earlier, the ICT Act mandates ZICTA to oversee and deal with cyber crimes and all other matters that relate to the security of the network. So it is our role to ensure that there's protection for your consumers, and we deal with whatever cyber crimes are prevailing. I don't know if my colleagues in the room would like to add on this particular point, Mr. Banda or Vanessa.
I think particularly because we are speaking to people, FinTechs, I think the key issue is that even as you are developing these platforms or these innovations, I think it's very, very important that you spend a little bit more time trying to also think about the network security as well as the cyber security threats that are likely to be associated with these platforms. I think that's the main issue. I think your business proposal or your innovation itself can either be made or it can break, particularly on this particular issue on how secure that platform is. Yeah.
Okay, so we continue ZICTA'S role. Then we'll speak into the interoperability among DFS providers. So where applicable, ZICTA strongly encourages digital financial services networks to be interoperable. One major example is the promotion of service providers to conduct transactions between one mobile money operator to another, which is highly convenient for customers. So there was a time when I could not send money from my Airtel money to MTN, to an MTN number. But now, because of our intervention, it's possible you can send money from Airtel to MTN, you know, with no difficulty. So that makes doing business for the financial service provider easy. Okay. The other thing that we do as ZICTA is numbering and short codes. So under the ICT Act, again, we are in charge of allocating numbering resources to whoever requires. So for most digital financial service providers, they would require short codes. So, you know, you have those numbers. For example, if it's Atlas Mara Tenga, you know, they have 202 hash, star 202 hash. So for them to get that number, they would come to ZICTA, and then we allocate them that number, and then they go and enter into some commercial agreement with the network operators, and then have that number activated, and then you have your clients access your services and whatever it is you're offering using that short code. So if you need a short code, this is a place to come to. Another important thing is the critical database. So Section 2 of the ICT Act sort of defines what a critical database is. It defines it as a collection of critical data in electronic form from where it may be accessed, produced, or extracted. So basically, we're talking about all the data that you collect in electronic form. So whether you're getting it via SMS or an email, we're talking about all that information about your clients. Okay, so critical data, it was declared by the minister. Data becomes critical once it is declared by the minister under Section 44 of the ICT of the ECT Act, and the criteria really that he uses is national security issues and economic and social well-being of the citizens. So if the minister determines that your information or the information that you collect is important for purposes of national security or the economic or social well-being of the nation, then he will declare that information as critical. And there's a certain way you're supposed to treat critical information under the law. Okay, so if you go to the regulations that were issued under the ECT Act, the general regulations, the financial sector information that you collect in the financial sector was declared as critical information. So meaning the way you deal with that information or the way you treat that information should be in line with the provisions of the ECT Act. And it is ZICTA'S mandate to ensure that everybody in the financial sector complies with that particular law. Okay, so if you go again in the ECT Act under Section 48, there's another requirement for ZICTA to conduct audits on the critical database administrators. So once you've set up this database and it is declared critical, like anything in the financial sector, ZICTA will be required from time to time to conduct audits. So they will visit your database, will monitor how you keep that information, whether you share that information, whether you've obtained the consent of the data subject to share that information in the event that you share, and things like that. And the security of the database, who can access the database. So those are some of the things that we look at. So this is a very critical and very important area that you want to comply with as a provider of digital financial services. Okay, then the last part of our presentation is on ZICTA'S support to fintech startups. I'll let Vanessa speak into this one. Vanessa?
Hi, good morning. Can leave it there. Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Simunza. Okay. So, good morning. I'm going to talk about ZICTA'S role in supporting fintech startups, or basically startups in general. So, this is a brief presentation, and basically, I'll just speak into what ZICTA does to support startups. Okay. So, ZICTA has, for the last 4 years, conducted an ICT innovation program. This has been a program that is aimed at supporting and promoting ICT-related startups, as well as micro, small, and medium enterprises in Zambia, including FinTechs. Okay. So this program is mainly designed to provide support services to startups. So basically, these are support services that are aimed at improving the viability of the various projects that are presented to the authority, as well as to assist in mitigating some of the prominent challenges that startups as well as SMEs face in their quest to penetrate the market. So this support is offered but not limited to marketing support, technical skills training, access to facilities such as internet, computers. We have devices for mobile app development, as well as other office essential office equipment. We also have mentorship opportunities with industry experts. We also provide linkages to startups where we provide platforms rather where they're able to meet with potential financials, off-takers, and equity partners for financial support. And also we provide financial support to some of the startups that we identify as having the highest likelihood of success on the Zambian market. So we provide them with financial support to more or less commercialize their projects. So this, in summary, this summarizes what ZICTA'S role is under the innovation program. I know Mr. Banda would also want to comment one or two things, or maybe perhaps if there are questions, he may come in, but in a nutshell, this is what ZICTA does to support startups, including fintechs in Zambia.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Alick, do you still have another page to go, or would you like to go to questions?
We can go straight into it.
All right. So coming to questions, I have a question from, give me a second here. I have a question from Charity Mwanza, in which she's asking the question, is ZICTA involved in the actual review of security systems implemented by digital financial solution providers? And to everybody who's been listening to the, who's on the cast, I just want in the chat box, please list your questions inside the chat box so that we can share them with ZICTA. So Alick, I think this is for you or anybody who's on your side. Is ZICTA involved in the actual review of security systems implemented by digital financial solution providers?
So I think there's no strict requirement per se that need to come to ZICTA and have their systems checked. But you could request ZICTA to do some kind of stress testing of your system and to give you feedback. This is part of our mandate, and we are able to assist. Most of the time, what we try to do, particularly within the financial sector, is that we work together with the Bank of Zambia who are the primary regulator for financial services. So in the past, what we've tried to do is that when there's an issue that relates to security, and the Bank of Zambia would invite us to work with them in trying to resolve that particular issue. However, like we did mention earlier, it is always good to be proactive, that when you do develop something, you could always come to ZICTA to maybe get our experts to maybe give you an opinion or to test in terms of how adequate it is. But currently, because we don't have a direct licensing obligation, we do not necessarily do that proactively in terms of trying to do it before people launch. But you could take the initiative actually to come to ZICTA to get that expert advice.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Harford would like to know, what kind of financial support does ZICTA provide, and what qualifies a business to receive it?
I'll take that one. So, like I mentioned earlier, actually what we do is that we put up a core for applications. You've muted me.
Thank you, Vanessa. You can go on.
Okay, so what we do is that we put up a core for applications, for ICT related applications from Zambian youths. These are youths between, so these are youths between 18 to 35 who have ICT related projects. And what we do is that we invite an external panel of judges who come and review these applications to assess their suitability for enrollment into the ICT innovation program. So once these applications are reviewed, we more or less shortlist them to now come and be part of the program. And we take them through a program of about 6 months, under which through which they undergo various training programs, such as business and technical training programs. And at the very end, we again shortlist the top 3 or 5, depending on what the capacity for that year is, and we provide them with financial support to commercialize their businesses.
Thank you, Vanessa. Walia Kampamba would like to know, for users that sign up online, are electronic agreements valid when it comes to customers giving consent to the use of their information by third parties?
Okay, I'll take that one. I want to confirm that yes, those are valid. Remember what the law requires is...
Alick, could you kindly unmute your mic?
Okay, great. Okay, so I was saying I would want to confirm that yes, they are valid. What the law requires is that there should be express consent and it must be in writing. So it doesn't say whether it should be handwritten or it should be typed. So as long as the customer says, yes, I consent, and it is in writing, then that is valid. So it must be express and clear. It should not be implied. Thank you.
Thank you, Alick. Next question is from Dominic Kapalu. Need to confirm whether know your customer data where know your customer data or KYC data should legally sit. Does it have to be stored locally, or can it be stored in the cloud on servers like the Amazon Web Services? And what are the legal implications around this?
Okay. So currently, as the law stands, there's no express provision stating that data should sit in Zambia, but we encourage that data sits in Zambia for a number of reasons. Number one, ZICTA is mandated under Section 48, I think I mentioned it in the presentation, to conduct audits on all database administrators. And remember, the financial sector is the information you collect was declared as critical information. So ZICTA would have to conduct audits on your database. Now, what that means is if your data is kept on a server in China, ZICTA would have to go to China to conduct those audits. And the danger is that sometimes that cost may be passed on to you, the person that, the cost of travel, the person that is running that database. So we encourage that the data should be stored in Zambia. I think we have a number of data centers around here within the country that you can use. We have the data center just next to ZICTA here that you can use to store your information. So at the moment, it's strictly speaking, you can keep your data on the cloud, but we encourage that the data is kept in Zambia.
Thank you very much. Nyankundi and Walia would asking around short codes. One question being, what is the cost of purchasing and numbering, purchasing the numbering and short code? And also, what are the procedures around applying for a short code? And what would be the requirements FinTech would need to meet in the process of acquiring a short code?
Okay, so basically, thank you, for that question. I think it's very useful. I know for most FinTechs, they're either looking to working with shortcuts. So let me start with the process and the requirements, and then I could mention one or two other things. Yeah, so basically, ZICTA does issue two types of shortcodes, the 3-digit and the 4-digit shortcode. And usually what you only need to do is to complete an application form where you attach a cover letter indicating what you want to use the shortcode for. The other attachments that we are looking for also require you to give us a copy of your company registration, a valid copy of your company registration details or incorporation details. We also need a ZRA certificate for tax clearance. And I think with that, if you're applying for the first time, there's a once-off application fee. And then on an annual basis, if you want to renew, you have to do your renewals. You could call our 7070 line. They could give you specific details in terms of the amounts. But I think in terms of the process and what you need to apply for, I think that's all you need. Usually we will review your application and then we'll ask you to give us additional information if at all we need some clarifications. If you take more than 14 days to give us that information, then we more or less will suspend the application until you finish us that information. So it's our colleagues in numbering and type approval usually do work with this. And like I said, if you need specifics in terms of how much it costs annually at once and how much the once-off cost is, you could easily call our 7070 toll-free number. They could link you to our colleagues to deal with that.
Thank you, Bernard. Is the information with regards to the procedure or forms, are there any forms available online that people can access?
Yes, we have a form online. I think what we could do is we'll be able to share a link. We're trying to make our website more user-friendly. I think we've received some feedback that people have challenges finding these documents online. So we're trying to make it more user-friendly. But what we'll do is we'll try and get at the end of the call of the presentation, try and share the link where this application form is, so that I think you could share it with the people that are on this call.
Thank you very much. All right. Do we have any more questions from the community? Do you have any consideration? Well, I would like to know, do you have any consideration with regards to fees for startups that are who are just setting up? And similar questions we've asked towards, and this could be through your programs as well, but a similar question that we're also asking the regulators. is the agency also considering setting up a sandbox that allows startups that do not yet meet the requirements of the costing requirements that larger corporations would pay, but are still experimenting or seeking market within the community? Is there consideration for certain consideration for those with regards to fees and limited regulations that allow them to at least test their ideas before they scale out?
Okay, so thank you so much. I think definitely, I think there are quite a number of institutions that are coming up with sandboxes, as you have rightly called them. I think one of them that we are aware of is Zanaco, and I think there are quite a number of initiatives. Within ZICTA, we've also been trying to explore that possibility. But what we also have been trying to do is to get the feedback from FinTechs or startups to say what exactly should this sandbox look like. So I would encourage the people on the call, particularly the FinTechs and even the people facilitating this call, to give us some proposals on what we can actually do. One of the things that we're trying to incorporate within the program, the innovation program that Vanessa talked about, is where we have a short code that can be shared. I think technically you are aware that basically there's a way in which a short code can be shared across different startups, but to the public, it's linked to different numbers. So those are some of the possibilities that we've been looking at. Unfortunately, issues to do with the fees on the short codes are guided by the law. They are not necessarily ZICTA specified. So there is an SI that basically says this short code should be charged so much. The only exclusion in the law has to do with like emergency numbers or numbers that have to do with medical emergency, fire, and things like that. That's how the law sits right now. Of course, the law is dynamic. People can make proposals, and there's a process through the government channels in which the laws can be amended. So obviously, I think if there's enough justification and it's well motivated, these are submissions that can be made, not only through ZICTA, but even through our current ministry, to try and see how we can make amendments to these laws to accommodate a very promising space like the FinTechs or the startups. But aside from that, I think a potential solution is what you rightly said, having sandboxes, shared facilities, having organizations that can provide this opportunity for testing. Within the innovation program, I can mention to you that we have a number, a short code. So you just need to more or less participate in the program. There is an opportunity for you to use the available short code. It's only one where basically you can use it for testing and see how it works out. I think also in the previous groups, the finalists on the program have been able to use part of their support that we give them as ZICTA to acquire a short code. So we pay for the short code on their behalf based on the financing support that we have. So in this sense, I think that's the feedback on that particular issue.
Thank you very much. I don't have any more questions in the chat box or in the chat on the chat section. So I guess it's time for us to wrap up today's session. I'd like to thank the team at ZICTA, Alick, Vanessa, and Bernard for making time to meet with us today. It really is encouraging to hear of your support for not only for the FinTechs, but also for startups in the local startup ecosystem and community. And also that you are actively engaged as enablers through your programs that actually also support startups. Would also like to thank you for being open to working with startups, and we would be glad to share your contact details with the FinTechs and startups that we're working with, so that with regards to any areas that they would like to contact you and get further information or licensing that they are looking for. Also, I think very important for them would be to seek further clarification around data protection and network security for their startups and the standards that they should be adhering to with regards to protecting the data of their customers. I think that knowing that they can call you on 7070, but also giving them direct contact for some of you is something that we'll be happy to share. We would also be happy to share the presentation that you kindly prepared with them through our chat rooms, by email. And we look forward to engaging with you on another session for startups in the future.
Okay, thank you so much, Simunza. And I think it's been a pleasure on our part to be part of this discussion. We're available. I always say the work we do is community service. So we're available for any help that you may require. We will share, I think, via email, our contact details for you to share with the rest of the team. And feel free to just contact us anytime. Drop an email, or once we defeat the coronavirus, you can even walk into our offices and just have a chat with us on some of these issues. Mr. Banda.
No, it's been a pleasure, and it's always good to speak to you and work with the different fintechs. And I think, like you rightly indicated, our doors are very much open, and we certainly look forward to moving this conversation forward so that we can have actually some things that we can point to say these were some positive outcomes from our engagement. Thank you.
Indeed. All right. To everybody that came online, thank you very much for taking time, and we hope that you have a great day. Looking forward to having you at the next session that we will have with the Bank of Zambia. We will send out communications for dates and times soon. Thank you, and have a good day. Actually, enjoy your weekend at home.
Thanks, Simunza. Thanks, everyone.